The judge's gavel slammed down, echoing like a gunshot in the tense courtroom, but nothing prepared me for the shock that followed. My mother's hand came crashing across my cheek, a slap loud enough to silence the murmurs and send a wave of heat rushing through my face. I stood there, stunned and burning, in front of everyone I'd once called family and friends I barely knew. My name was nowhere on the will, yet here I was, accused and erased. As if my very existence was a mistake someone wanted to wipe clean. How did the people who were supposed to protect me become the ones trying to bury me? How could they forge my name and twist the truth so easily? I felt the weight of decades pressing down on me, but something inside refused to break. My name is Clara Bennett, and this is the moment my quiet life exploded into a fight I never expected, but one I am determined to win. What would you do if the family you trusted betrayed you, and the only way to survive was to unearth secrets long buried? I grew up in a small Pennsylvania town, where the turning leaves of autumn colored the streets with fiery reds and golds, and Grandpa Henry's farmhouse stood like a fortress of memory and love. He wasn't a man of many words, but his eyes spoke volumes, eyes that saw me. The quiet granddaughter who helped without complaint, who stayed when others left. When Grandpa passed away, I thought I was ready to carry on his legacy, but instead, I found myself locked out of the very home that was supposed to be mine. My family had rewritten the story, forged documents, and silenced my claim as if I never existed. But Grandpa left me more than memories. He left clues, a silver locket, a secret letter, pieces of truth hidden away for someone like me to find. Each day, as I peel back layers of lies, I realize this isn't just about a house or an inheritance. It's about reclaiming my identity, fighting for justice, and facing a family fractured by greed and betrayal. How far will I go to make sure the truth is heard? And what will it cost me to stand alone against them? Stay with me as I uncover the hidden chapters of my family's story, one truth at a time. After the courtroom ordeal, the sting of my mother's slap still burned, but it was the cold silence that followed that cut deepest. Walking out of that grand old building in the heart of Pennsylvania, where my grandfather's legacy was supposed to be honored, I felt more alone than ever. The autumn wind whipped around me, carrying fallen leaves in swirling patterns like ghosts of the past, whispers of all the family gatherings I'd missed, the birthdays uncelebrated, the quiet dinners where my presence was barely acknowledged. How could they so easily erase me, as if I was just a shadow? Yet, tucked deep in my coat pocket, the silver locket Grandpa Henry gave me on my 60th birthday felt like a talisman, a symbol of trust and unspoken promises. It was a reminder that despite their betrayal, I was not invisible. That night, back in my modest apartment a few blocks from the courthouse, I sat alone with the envelope Grandpa's longtime neighbor had handed me. The letter inside was fragile but clear, a confession of the truth Grandpa had entrusted to a man he trusted even more than his own family. He had changed his will weeks before he died, naming me the rightful heir to the house and everything in it. The legal documents I had seen in court, the forged signatures, the fabricated witness statements, all of it was a lie. They had tried to steal not only the house but my very name. And yet, here was proof that their scheme had a crack, a weakness that I could exploit. But what good was truth when your own family wears smiles that hide knives? The next days were a whirlwind of quiet investigation, late trips to the county records office, meetings with an old family friend who remembered Grandpa's intentions, and endless hours comparing signatures and dates. Each discovery fueled the fire burning inside me, a fire I hadn't realized I still had. I wasn't just fighting for property, I was fighting for my dignity, for the memory of the man who believed in me when no one else did. Still, the hardest battle wasn't against forged papers or courtroom battles, it was against the weight of loneliness. The people I expected to stand by me turned away, and the silence from my mother and brother was a sharp reminder of the cost of speaking out. But I held on to that silver locket and the whispered words Grandpa once said on his porch. They may forget your name, Clara, but never forget who you are. So I ask you, when everything you thought was true crumbles, when those closest to you turn their backs, How do you find the strength to fight back? This is my story, a story of quiet courage, of battles fought in shadows, and of a legacy reclaimed not just with papers and court orders, but with the unbreakable will of a granddaughter who refused to be erased. Stay with me because the next chapter is just beginning. The quiet of my apartment was shattered by a knock at the door, a sharp, unexpected sound that sliced through the thick silence I had wrapped around myself since the courtroom battle. I froze, heart pounding not from fear, but from the weight of what this moment might mean. Opening the door, I found Helen, Grandpa Henry's longtime neighbor and friend, standing there with a worn envelope clutched in her hand and a look that said she carried more than just paper. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scanning the scattered documents on my kitchen table, the affidavits, the forged wills, the letters that told the story my family wanted to hide. "Clara," she said softly, "there's something you need to see." Helen handed me the envelope, yellowed and fragile, its edges worn from years of waiting. Inside was a handwritten letter from Grandpa Henry himself, addressed to me. His familiar scrawl spilled across the page, words filled with love, regret, and a plea for justice. He wrote of the years he spent watching me quietly, how I was the steady hand that held the family together when others faltered, how he trusted me to carry on the legacy no matter the cost. But most importantly, he revealed a secret he'd never shared with anyone else. The original trust documents had been hidden away, safely tucked in a place only I would know. The room seemed to hold its breath as I reread his words. The fight wasn't over, but now I had a weapon stronger than any court order, a promise from the man who believed in me. My hands trembled as I traced the lines of his letter, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over me like a cloak. It was no longer just about reclaiming a house or a name. It was about honoring Grandpa Henry's faith and exposing the truth that had been buried beneath lies and forged signatures. That night, with Helen's quiet support, I made my way back to the farmhouse, the place I had been locked out of for too long. The air smelled of wood and fading memories, but as I stepped inside, something shifted. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was a testament to resilience, to the stories whispered in the creaking floors and sunlit windows. And now it was mine to protect. But as the shadows grew longer, I knew the road ahead would be far from easy. My family's silence was a storm waiting to break, and the legal battles to come would test everything I believed in. Yet, as I stood there, clutching Grandpa's letter, I felt something fierce awaken inside me, a quiet strength forged in years of being overlooked and underestimated. So I ask you, when the people you love become the ones you must fight, when the truth is hidden behind a wall of silence, how do you hold on to hope? This is my journey, one of courage, betrayal, and the unyielding power of truth. And the next chapter? It's about to unfold. Stay with me. The sun was just beginning to set, casting long shadows across the old farmhouse that had been my grandfather's sanctuary, and now my battleground. I stood on the creaky front porch, the air thick with the scent of aging wood and autumn leaves, clutching the worn letter Grandpa Henry had entrusted to Helen. Each word in his handwriting was a lifeline, a promise that I wasn't alone in this fight, even if my own family had turned their backs on me. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt like the silent witness to decades of betrayal, lies, and stolen dreams. Yet as I stepped inside, the weight of history pressed on me, not as a burden, but as a call to action. Inside, dust motes floated lazily through the fading light, settling on the worn furniture and faded photographs that traced the story of a family I barely recognized anymore. I ran my fingers along the kitchen counter where I had once sat as a child, hiding from the sharp words and cold silences that had come to define my family. But tonight, something was different. This was my home now, not just in title, but in spirit. I had fought too hard, uncovered too many lies, to let it slip away. As I moved through the rooms, memories flooded back, the quiet strength of Grandpa Henry, the way his eyes would twinkle when he saw me work hard, even when no one else noticed. He had believed in me when everyone else doubted. And now, armed with the truth and the support of those who still cared, I was ready to honor that belief. But the path ahead was uncertain. The court battles, the whispered threats, the cold shoulders from my own blood, they all loomed like storm clouds on the horizon. Yet beneath that storm, I felt a fierce determination burning brighter than ever. I set the letter down on the worn dining table and looked out the window at the fading light. The silence in this house was no longer empty, it was filled with possibility. It was a chance to rewrite a story marred by greed and silence, to build something new from the broken pieces left behind. But I had to ask myself, how far am I willing to go to protect what's mine? And what will it take to finally make my family see the truth they've been trying to bury? This isn't just my fight. It's a fight for every person who's ever been silenced, erased, or forgotten. And as the night deepens, I'm ready to face whatever comes next. Because sometimes, reclaiming your legacy means standing alone in the dark and refusing to back down. Stay with me, because the story is far from over. The knock on my door came again, sharper this time, breaking the quiet I had desperately tried to hold on to since stepping into Grandpa Henry's house. I opened it cautiously to find my cousin Linda standing there, clutching a worn leather binder filled with faded papers and old photographs. Her eyes held a mixture of guilt and hope, a silent apology for the years of silence between us. "Clara," she said softly, stepping inside, "there's something you need to see." Grandpa made sure someone kept this safe. We sat together at the kitchen table, the dim light casting long shadows over the scattered documents. Linda handed me the binder, and as I flipped through the yellowed pages, I found the original trust, signed, notarized, and untouched by the forgery that had clouded the court proceedings. There were hospital bills Grandpa paid himself, letters he wrote in secret, and notes that painted a picture of a man fighting not just illness, but a battle to protect the family he loved from those who sought to take it all away. The weight of it all pressed down on me, not just the legal fight, but the years of quiet sacrifice. The invisible burdens I had carried alone. Grandpa had trusted me when everyone else doubted. He had believed in the steady heart beneath my silence. And now, armed with this proof, I felt a fierce resolve ignite inside me. This wasn't just about reclaiming a house or a name. It was about honoring a legacy of strength and love that no amount of betrayal could erase. But as the night deepened, the reality of the road ahead settled in. My family's refusal to acknowledge the truth was a storm gathering on the horizon, and the court battles promised to be brutal. Still, with Linda's quiet support and Grandpa's words echoing in my mind, I knew I wasn't alone. The fight was no longer just mine, it was a stand for everyone who had been silenced, overlooked, or written out of their own story. I looked around the room, feeling the pulse of the past and the promise of the future intertwine. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with the courage to speak up, to push back, and to claim what had always been rightfully mine. So I ask you, when the truth is buried beneath layers of lies, when those you love turn away, how do you find the strength to rise? This is my journey, a story of quiet courage, fierce loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between a granddaughter and her grandfather's legacy. And trust me, the best is yet to come. The morning sunlight streamed through the cracked window, casting long, golden beams across the cluttered kitchen table where the truth had quietly gathered, old wills, affidavits, and the fragile letter Grandpa Henry had written with trembling hands. I sat there, coffee cooling beside me, my mind racing with every twist and turn this fight had taken. The weight of years, of betrayal, silence, and stolen promises pressed down on my shoulders, but beneath it all, a fierce determination burned bright. I wasn't just battling for a house. I was fighting to reclaim my place in a family that had tried to erase me, to honor a grandfather whose faith in me never wavered. The phone buzzed, a soft reminder that the world outside still moved, unaware of the storm brewing in my quiet corner of Pennsylvania. It was Aunt Marcia, her voice gravelly but warm, carrying the kind of news that could turn tides. She'd found another piece of Grandpa's puzzle, a signed trust draft hidden away, untouched by the lies that had filled courtrooms and dinners alike. "Clara," she said, "this is the truth they wanted to bury." I held the document like a lifeline, the ink still fresh with Grandpa's promise. It was more than paper. It was proof that I had never been invisible, that the legacy I fought for was real and rightful. But with every revelation came shadows, whispers of threats, cold stares from those who once called me family, and the bitter taste of isolation. The silence from my mother and brother was louder than any accusation, a reminder of the cost of standing up for what's right. Yet, as I traced the curves of Grandpa's signature, I felt an unshakable resolve take hold. This wasn't just about reclaiming a house or an inheritance. It was about justice, about truth piercing through years of darkness. The court battles ahead would be fierce, the opposition relentless, but I carried something stronger than any legal document, the unwavering belief that I was meant to carry this torch. So I ask you, when your own blood turns their back, when the world seems determined to silence your story, how do you find the courage to keep fighting? This is my journey, one marked by quiet strength, deep wounds, and the unbreakable bond between a granddaughter and the grandfather who believed in her. And as the days grow darker, I'm ready to step into the light. The next chapter is waiting, and it's going to change everything. The morning I walked into the courthouse felt like stepping into a battlefield cloaked in silence. The cold marble floors echoed every step I took, each one heavier than the last, carrying the weight of years spent fighting for a truth others tried to bury. Clutching the folder that held Grandpa Henry's original trust, signed, notarized, and untouched by the forgeries, I felt a fierce mix of hope and anxiety. This wasn't just paperwork. It was the key to reclaiming everything stolen from me. The courtroom buzzed with quiet whispers as lawyers arrived, reporters settled in, and the air thickened with anticipation. I wasn't just a granddaughter anymore. I was a force demanding to be heard. As the judge entered, the room shifted. The moment my affidavit appeared on the courtroom screen, detailed, time-stamped, and backed by undeniable proof, the color drained from my brother's and mother's faces. Their confident masks cracked under the weight of truth. The judge's voice was steady as he announced a temporary freeze on the estate, acknowledging the serious inconsistencies in the contested will. Gasps rippled through the room, some faces filled with shock, others with quiet vindication. For the first time, my fight was more than personal. It was public, undeniable, and unstoppable. But as I stood there, calm and collected, I realized this battle was about more than just legal documents. It was about reclaiming my identity, my place in a family that tried to erase me, and honoring the grandfather who had never given up on me. The courtroom became a stage where silence was broken, and the truth finally had its voice. Yet, even in that moment of victory, I knew the journey was far from over. The road ahead would be long, with more battles to face, more lies to dismantle, and more strength to find within myself. So I ask you, when the people who should protect you become the ones who try to destroy you, how do you stand your ground? How do you keep fighting when the odds feel stacked against you? This is my story, a story of resilience, courage, and the unyielding power of truth. And as the courtroom lights dimmed and the judge called the session into recess, I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer invisible. The fight for my legacy had just begun. The courtroom was thick with tension, a silence so heavy it felt like it could crush the very walls around us. As I sat there, heart steady but mind racing, I watched the judge deliver a ruling that would finally change everything. The contested will, twisted and forged by those who wanted to erase me, was declared void. The original trust, the one Grandpa Henry had signed with his own hand, was reinstated. I was named the sole beneficiary. There were no cheers, no grand applause, just the quiet acknowledgement of a victory long overdue. Yet, as I folded the crisp court documents, I felt a flood of emotions, relief, vindication, and something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years: hope. Even as the gavel fell, signaling the end of this chapter. The absence of my family's response spoke louder than any words.
No επαλεδείς.
No admissions of guilt, just silence. But I wasn't waiting for their forgiveness. Instead, I found strength in a simple envelope that arrived days later and signed but unmistakably familiar. Inside was a card painted with serene mountain pines and a message, "Sorry for everything. They never should have dragged you in." The scent of sandalwood, my brother's cologne, clung to the paper like a ghost of the family I once knew. I didn't cry. I didn't call back. I folded the card carefully and tucked it away with Grandpa's silver locket and the worn diner napkin he had wrapped his gifts in. These were my keepsakes, reminders of a quiet war fought and won. Returning to the old farmhouse, I stepped inside with a mixture of reverence and resolve. The house smelled of lemon oil and memories, a place paused in time, waiting for someone brave enough to press play again. As I wandered through the rooms, touching the faded furniture and cracked walls, I realized this wasn't just about property. It was about reclaiming my story, rebuilding what had been broken, and honoring the legacy of the man who never gave up on me. I'm sharing this journey because it's more than a personal victory. It's a testament to anyone who's been silenced, erased, or forgotten. When family turns away and truth seems buried beneath layers of lies, holding on to hope can feel impossible. But I promise you this, the quiet strength inside you is louder than any betrayal. And sometimes, the greatest fight is not in the courtroom, but in standing tall when no one else will. So stay with me, because the story doesn't end here. It's only just beginning. The first time I stepped back into Grandpa Henry's old farmhouse after the court's final ruling, I was overwhelmed by a flood of memories and a surprising sense of peace. The dust lay thick on the furniture, the air smelled faintly of lemon oil and aged wood, and the silence was different now, not heavy with absence, but filled with possibility. For years, this house had stood like a ghost, a monument to the battles fought and the family ties broken. Now it was mine, not just on paper, but in every creaking floorboard and every faded photograph lining the walls. I ran my hand along the worn kitchen counter where I'd once sat as a child, hiding from the storms of family discord. And I realized this wasn't just a house. It was a testament to resilience, to love that had survived even when voices were silenced. In the quiet corners, I found small reminders of Grandpa Henry's faith in me, a folded napkin he'd wrapped around his birthday gifts, the silver locket that had never left my side, and a letter, carefully tucked away by Aunt Marcia, filled with his final words of encouragement. "You carry the truth," he'd written, "and that truth will light the way when others try to cast shadows." Those words became my armor as I faced the cold shoulders and silent accusations from the family I once trusted. Their absence was a wound, but one I refused to let define me. So I made a choice, not to dwell on the betrayals or the court battles that had left scars deeper than any slap or silence, but to build something new. I pledged half the estate to a local nonprofit that supports women fighting for justice in family disputes, honoring Grandpa's belief in strength and fairness. The rest I kept, not as a trophy, but as a home where new memories could grow, rooms filled not with resentment, but with hope and renewal. Standing on the porch one crisp evening, the streetlights casting long shadows over the quiet town, I caught my reflection in the window. Gone was the girl who had been silenced and erased. In her place stood a woman forged in quiet courage, ready to write the next chapter on her own terms. The fight had changed me, shaped me, and though I never received the apologies I deserved, I found something better, proof that resilience and truth can outlast even the deepest betrayals. So I ask you, when you've been pushed to the edges of your own story, how do you reclaim your voice? How do you hold on to hope when silence threatens to drown it out? This is my story, a journey of loss and redemption, of battles fought not with fists, but with unwavering resolve. And as the night falls over Grandpa's farmhouse, I know this isn't the end. It's only the beginning. The night I received the unmarked envelope was a quiet one, The kind of evening where shadows stretch long and secrets feel heavy in the air. I had just settled into Grandpa Henry's old armchair, now my own, when I noticed the slip of paper taped to my front door. No return address, no handwriting. Just a simple watercolor of towering mountain pines on the front. Inside, printed in neat type, were words that felt both like a balm and a whisper from the past. Sorry for everything. They never should have dragged you in. The scent that clung to the card was unmistakable, my brother's sandalwood cologne, a silent confession without a name or signature. I folded the card carefully, placing it alongside the silver locket Grandpa had given me and the worn diner napkin he always used to wrap his birthday wishes. These objects were more than keepsakes. They were the quiet trophies of a battle fought in shadows, but won in truth. Returning to the farmhouse, I moved slowly through rooms thick with memories and dust, the faint smell of lemon oil lingering like a whispered promise. Each step echoed the years I'd been locked out, the years I'd spent fighting for a legacy they tried to steal. But now, the house breathed differently. It wasn't just a place frozen in time. It was a home ready to be filled with new stories, new laughter, and a future shaped by resilience rather than regret. I ran my hand along the cracked window pane and looked out at the street where neighbors had once greeted me with warm smiles and now offered nods of quiet support. This house was no longer a symbol of betrayal. It was a testament to survival, to the strength found in standing tall when others try to break you down. The silence from my family still echoed, but it no longer held power over me. I wasn't waiting for apologies or explanations. Instead, I chose to turn the page. To honor Grandpa Henry's faith in me by giving back, half the estate went to a local charity that helps women caught in similar fights, those silenced by greed and betrayal. The rest I kept, not as a trophy, but as a sanctuary, a place where truth lives and grows. As dusk settled, I stood on the porch watching the town settle into its night rhythm. In the window's reflection, I no longer saw the girl who had been overlooked and erased. Instead, I saw a woman forged by quiet courage, ready to build a legacy that would outlast the darkest shadows. And as the stars began to shine, I knew this story was far from over. It was a beginning, a promise that no matter how deep the silence, the truth will always find a voice. Stay with me, because what comes next is worth fighting for.